Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar today, Advanced Location Data, what it is, and how it can be used to stop online financial crimes. We are thrilled with the number of people that have shown interested in our webinar, and thank you so much again for joining us. Before we get started, I want to make sure we go through some housekeeping. We would like to make this webinar as an engaging experience for you. So we welcome your questions throughout the webinar. So if you look at the GoToWebinar command area, you'll find the questions panel. Please submit your questions there. And I will do my best to keep an eye on the questions coming, and I will try to get Trevor to answer the questions as we go. You also have planned some time at the end of the webinar to go through some of the questions, but keep in mind that maybe we're not going to be able to answer your specific one today. Depends on the volume of the questions we receive. But Trevor will be happy to set up a follow-up call with you individually after the webinar, if you want so. We will also send a follow-up email with the recording of this webinar, and please share with your colleagues if you feel it's relevant. So now let's get started. I'd like to introduce you to Trevor Wingert. Trevor has over 2 decades of experience building safe, empowering online and mobile user experiences. He has designed and implemented fraud and risk management solutions for a variety of e-commerce and payment companies. These include turnkey client onboarding, customer decisioning, and CIP compliance solutions for payment facilitator and point-of-sales lending companies. At GeoGuard, he's developing innovation applications built on the company's advanced geolocation security technologies for the financial services, fintech, and payments markets. So Trevor, turn this over to you.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you everybody for coming out today. I'm really keen to introduce you to advanced geolocation data and how we can use it for anti-fraud and financial crime mitigation. To start, GeoComply was founded in 2012 as a solution for the iGaming space. It started to allow online gambling platforms to meet location requirements from state regulators as federal laws in the US changed so states could permit online gambling within their borders. A player needed to be verified as being in a jurisdiction in order to bet, and IP-based solutions weren't going to cut it for regulators. But there was no solution that existed, so GeoComply built one. Location accuracy is fundamental in meeting these requirements. This is a high stakes area with directors of gaming platforms and their payment providers at risk of large fines and time in jail if they let a wager be placed from outside their borders. We have nearly 100% share in our core US gaming market with a high volume of installs and daily transactions, and we continue to grow rapidly. And we're working with major brands and regulators in the US around the world. GeoComply's technology for the US betting, gaming, and lottery market has provided a foundation for us to take our solution to other industries through GeoGuard. Initially with media content protection, where we've been working with major players internationally for more than 5 years, and now into highly regulated industries such as financial services, crypto, and payments as a fraud and compliance management tool. Payments fraud in the US iGaming market is very low. The reason for that is almost 100% of the regulated online gambling industry in the US uses GeoComply's geolocation technology to detect and prevent fraud on top of their regulatory requirements. And when you look at what's happening today, existing technologies are not really helping stop the threats. The cost of crime continues to grow and projected to go past $10 trillion by 2025. And pandemic exposure has been through the roof, with massive increases as businesses went digital, exposing them to new risks. And then over the past year, we've seen huge AML penalties against large organizations, such as the $390 million assessment against Capital One earlier this year for failing to maintain an effective AML program. And last year's 1.3 billion Australian dollar AML fine against Westpac. Geolocation is starting to be seen as a missing link in meeting risk and compliance objectives globally. IP-based solutions are shown to be ineffective in supporting the regulatory identification requirements of the digital economy. The key message from regulators I'm hearing is that companies need to do more to know who their clients are, and geolocation data is critical as a verifiable data point. And geolocation lies at the heart of KYC, but those processes are weak. Regulation requires geolocation that works. Accurate location information is important in order to make sure your AML and sanctions compliance works. And geolocation can't be solved with IP addresses. GeoIP is not accurate on desktops, and it's even worse with mobile devices. And this is just going to continue to get worse as more than 50% of internet traffic is now mobile. And reasons for that include mobile network architecture, roaming, the use of roaming, and more. Your IP address is not equal to your location, even though GeoIP, which is the use of IP address databases to try and guess a user's location, have been used for decades. It just doesn't work. So here are a few examples of just how ineffective financial institutions' use of GeoIP checks are. If you look at the right on this slide, when testing from Vancouver, our location came up as Houston or California on major fintech platforms. And still, 95% of financial service apps use IP addresses alone for location identification. So there's a huge opportunity in the market to solve this problem. So geolocation can't be solved with IP addresses. GeoIP is not accurate at all. It's so easy for users to hide their location these days with hundreds of VPN apps for Android and iOS, thousands of different fake location apps and remote desktop apps, and a fast evolving cottage industry in dongles and emulators for sophisticated location masking. All this undermines the assumption that GeoIP is good enough. So what banks are currently doing is frustrating legitimate users while making fraudsters happy. They need to get out of this fraud middle where everybody is using the same tools with the same ineffectiveness. The location data alone is not sufficient. You need to be able to recognize these spoofing technologies. We have a solution, advanced geolocation security, which uses multiple data points to provide a profile of the user with high accuracy and confidence. We have very low false positive rates, making customers happy, and fraudsters will flee as they encounter barriers that have proven effective in keeping them out. This works seamlessly in the background with any negative impact on the user's experience. And yet, financial service apps don't ask for user locations. When they do, it's only for branch and ATM locators. So this is surprising even for an industry that's slow to adapt to new technology and user experiences. And why not? Our research shows that users are willing to share location data if the app makes clear the purpose of the data is for their protection, creating trust. We have an opportunity and objective to work with financial institutions to help them understand how they can improve their customer experience while protecting customers and themselves. And users have proven willing to share their information. The majority of everyday mobile apps ask users to share their location data, and users are likely to do so. You can check on your own phone right now in the location settings to see just how many apps you're sharing data with. And then we also commissioned a survey with payments.com that showed that millennials and Gen Z are willing to switch banks to institutions that use location data to protect their accounts. but there are people in the industry who do recognize the need to use location data to go forward, that it is time to move beyond the data set that they've been using and start using sophisticated new sources like geolocation data. So how does it start? Well, it's in this familiar manner. The standard request for location is so common with apps these days. In the examples I've shown here, there's no incentive to spoof. So because the utility to the customer comes from them sharing their accurate information. So until fraudsters get to the transaction, of course, where high costs and highly defensible goods are attractive targets for fraudsters. And this is where verified location checks can help with preventing this kind of fraud. And on mobile, this is likely data the user is already making available, as I mentioned. You can check your own phone's location settings again, just to see how common this is. But how does this work? So what is the difference between just asking for a location and verifying that? Well, imagine your customer using your app. So open your app and sign in, and then you ask them to share a location with that consent message that I'd shown, and capture their details in your app to send to GeoGuard. During this process, we collect a variety of location data to start, including Wi-Fi triangulation, GPS, GSM, and IP addresses, as well as device details. Then what makes us different is how we use this data. In the back end, our engine validates the user's location and sends the results back to your app, which you get a response from our system in a fraction of a second. With the response, you allow legitimate users to proceed with their activities or transactions without any roadblocks and stop bad actors before they can get in. And if location sharing consent isn't provided, we can still use the information that was made available through your app to detect attempts to spoof their location, which is a valuable insight in its own right. Then we go deeper by doing behavioral analysis on checks made over time. We can see if the user's device and location behaviors as expected or show signs suggesting patterns of location fraud. We aren't constantly monitoring locations. You just make a call from your app to check location at key steps in the customer journey, such as during the account opening process, at login, when account data is being updated or transactions are being made. And we aren't leaking data. The information is shared with us. That's shared with us is only used for security and compliance purposes.
Hey, Trevor, I got a question here. I think that could be a good place to ask. So how do I incorporate GeoGuard into my online application form for KYC purposes?
So it's really easy to do that. We have a variety of solutions to make it easy. If you've got a mobile app, we have native SDKs for Android and iOS. If it's a web app, we have a JavaScript library that you can add to your web page very easily. And if you're already capturing location data, we have an API where we just send the data that you capture currently over to our system through the API, and you get the similar response in all three ways. So you would probably, during the onboarding process on an online application, when the user clicks submit to accept terms or to complete the application, you prompt them to let them know that a geolocation check will be done during this process, and then you would, after consent, send that information to us, which you would then get back a response, put into your application process for your assessment, and whether your tools are automated or you've got a team that reviews your applications, you'd have this new insight from us that shows that the location has been verified, and you can see if that is relevant or appropriate based on your expectations.
Great. Another question here is they're saying that for financial services and fintech, and the user experience is becoming a top priority, right? Making sure that they have a good user experience here, customer experience. And is there any concern here on running those checks, and how this could impact bringing geo-compliant to that experience, and how that could impact negatively the customer experience?
Well, generally, the customer experience shouldn't be impacted if you're collecting that location information. But there's no change that you would just do the check in the background as the customer uses your application. If you need to ask for consent, they're accustomed to you doing this, and that usually it would occur at a point where it would seem reasonable for the purpose of the transaction for everybody's confidence to ask for location. So if anything, once you have the location data verified, you'd be able to offer a more flexible and smoother customer experience, which I'll go into shortly.
And I think this talks to the previous slides that you have, where if you communicate well to your customers, right, why you are requesting that location and which purpose you're using that location information, that only builds trust, right? Build trust, and they feel confident that that will help them not to suffer any type of fraud in their account.
Exactly, that transparency is an important part of creating the trust in sharing information. And you see that with Apple's recent release of the privacy nutrition labels, where when you have a better insight into what the app is doing with your information, you probably feel more comfortable sharing with them. And there's the benefits that you'll be able to provide by securing them better will be perceived as being valuable to them.
Good. One more question here. GPS is really accurate for maps. Do you rely on GPS for mobile phones, or is there other data types that you use?
We get multiple data points. So GPS is definitely a key one on mobile because of its accuracy. But we also, in order to get the confidence in that location, we use other data points such as Wi-Fi triangulation. The more information we get, the better, and the more accurate we will be. So I had shown on a previous slide how accurate the different data points are, and IP is way out there, but it still provides an important insight in that we can do assessment around the spoofing attempts, but in order to really verify the location, Wi-Fi networks and GSM are key.
Yeah, it was interesting to see that data about the distance for the IP accuracy. That could also take you to a different country, right? Depends on where you are. You may even get the response that you're showing a different country that you're making that transaction from, right?
Exactly. Mobile networks are complex and optimized, and that's why the IP address is not as meaningful as it used to be. When you're roaming, you would be shown as being back in your home network in a lot of times. So, that is definitely not something that is that you'd want to make a decision based on.
We have one more question here, and then I will let you move forward. But I know I can use VPN to change my IP address on my laptop. Are there ways to spoof other types of location data?
Yeah, there are, such as the dongles or location spoofing apps, especially on Android. And that's what makes IP so vulnerable, like not just VPNs, but also the ability to spoof GPS data. So that's where our solution is useful, that if you were to base your decisions just on that information, you would be a similar risk to IP address, where you can't have confidence in that. But because of the way that we look at these signals, the insights that we can capture, we can have a high confidence in being able to let you know the location of that user. Okay.
Oh, okay, sorry. One more that just came here. What if a mobile device is not used? What if a user just uses a VPN from a desktop?
That's where other data sources are useful. So you obviously don't get GSM or GPS information on the desktop, but the Wi-Fi triangulation is a useful way of placing the user's location very accurately. And with the VPN, we can do a similar sort of detection. We don't need GSM or GPS to confirm that user's location. And that's where the data that we capture and assess is an important collection for, but it works on desktop as well as mobile. So we do more than 350 checks for every transaction, all done in a fraction of a second. And this is something that an IP address database can't do, of course. It's very fast too. Bear in mind that the gaming industry is very sensitive to delays in processing transactions for the users. So we work really hard to ensure our engine is very fast and high performing. We check the user's location is accurate, real, and physically there. We've talked about in those questions, and that they aren't using an app to spoof their location or remotely control the device. Or if they're running a jailbroken device, developer tools, VPN, and the sort. And out of this, we recognize patterns of bad behavior that reveal risks. And very importantly, the success of our system is not just from our technology. We also have human intelligence behind our systems, teams that are constantly assessing new threats and spoofing techniques, using our years of experience in analyzing and verifying location data to meet stringent requirements in the gaming space for compliance. So the bottom line is all these defenses are highly successful and don't affect the customer experience. So everybody has a mixture of these use cases. And with GeoGuard, you get a no drama approach. So by using our service to verify user locations, you get fewer false positives and fewer false negatives. So you're letting through more people who should be let through and keeping out more people that should be kept out than you're probably getting with your existing approach. And our success rate on these points is unparalleled. And because you'll know better that your customers who they say they are, you'll be able to improve user experiences with more passive authentication to enhance the user experience. And you'll likely find reduced chargebacks as you'll be keeping out the users that would be inclined to do fraudulent behavior that would cause chargebacks. And so people will be less likely to have to deal with client fraud and identity theft on their accounts. And the certainty about who your customers are will help improve your automation and reduce costs of operation as you grow transactions. So you don't need to necessarily be investing and growing the team as your transactions grow. The insight should help your tools work better. When it comes to KYC, AML, and sanctions rules, you can significantly reduce regulatory risk by using our advanced location solutions to control who accesses your platform and excluding traders from restricted jurisdictions. Plus, we help stop bots. Everybody has bot problems these days. Our conversations, this comes up as a major pain point. Asking for the location check stops bots dead before they can submit that application.
Trevor, one more question came here before maybe we move to the next slide. Could using GeoGuard actually block my legitimate users? Or can I just set it to just to flag suspicious activity?
You can be very flexible in the way you use the data. You should hopefully, well, you should not be blocking legitimate users. You should be reducing the chances that that's happening. But also, you can configure it to block based on our decisioning, or more likely, you would take the notifications, put it into your models, or use it for scoring, and use the different data points that we sent back to score and hopefully get a better insight into that user. But you can use it passively and collect that data and make it available for assessment after the fact, or you can do active decisioning that should be higher performing than your current approaches. So to be clear, we're not a replacement for your existing tool stack, other than the GeoIP data, of course. We complement and enhance it. So our data should be ingested into your tools, your orchestration, your fraud management, your compliance tools, and be used by your team in the interfaces that they use on a daily basis. So this is not meant to be another tool that they have to log into. The data should get ingested into your system. And with that data in your system, you can extend your machine learning models to help them make better decisions.
So Trevor, another question that came here, what type of systems do usually we integrate with?
So we're looking at fraud tools and orchestration tools. Any system that you're currently using that allows the ingestion of enhanced data should be a good candidate for getting our data, for using our data, and it should fit into your models with that approach.
There is another question here, going back a little bit with the VPN. If I just want to block people who are using a VPN, is that an easy way to do this?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the core signals that we send. So you would, based on the IP, be able to know that the VPN. You might find that not all VPN users are bad though. So you might, and since it's so common with 1 in 3 people using VPNs on a regular basis on the internet, you might find that just blocking VPNs entirely might not be the right choice. But we can provide other insights, such as the type of VPN, the service that's coming from, and like you might want to not block corporate VPN users, for example. So there's a lot of flexibility that we can provide in order to make smart VPN filtering choices and not just use it as a crude tool to turn it off entirely. So what you get with GeoGuard services are verified user locations that provide certainty in knowing your clients. You get confidence in knowing customers' behaviors. And we provide the data to support regulator and law enforcement inquiries and audits and your own analytics. As well as we can reduce your risk of non-compliance when it comes to sanctions with the certainty that the users are where they say they are. You'll find that with low false positive rates, you'll be making customers happy, and fraudsters will flee as they encounter barriers that have been proven effective in keeping them out. This works seamlessly in the background without any negative impacts on your user's experience with your existing tools. And
Trevor, sorry, let me add some questions here from I'm seeing the questions coming in. I think that could be a good moment here. Is this type of fraud attempt being used to open up merchant accounts?
Absolutely. In our conversations with merchant acquirers or payment facilitator ISO companies, in our conversations with customers, we're finding that the underwriting processes and other account opening activities are very manual. And we see that the introduction of our services is a great way to help improve the efficiency of your team. So opening up merchant accounts is a great way. That there, a lot of times that's kind of a target for sophisticated fraud schemes, and so it would be an ideal place to introduce advanced geolocation checks in order to mitigate that risk, as well as blocking bots.
Another question I have here, Trevor, is oh, thank you. They're saying a very interesting and relevant topic. Excited to know more and to understand how this can aid forensic audit and investigation.
So by making verified geolocation data related to customer activities and transactions available within your tool set, you'll be able to give better support to forensic investigations. Like, that's one thing that you probably don't have now. You've got some data that's been verified, usually in branch for banking with document verification, that sort of thing. But in digital environments, it's a lot more challenging. So what we are able to do is provide an element of certainty that would be used in your data set for those kinds of investigations.
Thank you, Trevor. One more question. It's kind of a comment question. We'd like to use it to onboard customers. So maybe can you take a little bit, talk a little bit more how we could use GeoComply to help with onboarding customers?
Sure. So similar with the merchant accounts, any customer account opening process is a sensitive part in your relationship with the customer, and that it's fraught with uncertainty, and that's something that geolocation data can help with. And with those better signals, you'll be able to do better automation in your underwriting process or decisioning. We know that that's an important business process that companies are dealing with, but they're also, as a result, encountering pain points such as the bots and the more fraudulent, sophisticated fraudulent application. So what geolocation can do during that onboarding process, just do that location capture, send that data to us, and you'll have better signals to help you feel confident with that that customer is legitimate.
Good for now.
Okay. So GeoGuard's technology has been proving successful in highly related, demanding industry, and we think that we're ready to bring our solution to you. So I want to leave you today with these key takeaways. Any risk engine that still relies on IP addresses is outdated, obsolete, and misses the mark. And that you can strengthen existing insights and decision making with enhanced location intelligence in your existing stack. And without geolocation that works, compliance in any jurisdiction is impossible, and the risk of non-compliance is increasing. Geolocation data is becoming the regulatory standard for KYC and AML, and GeoGuard is the gold standard geolocation security platform for risk and compliance management. As a result, fraud has no place to hide.
Thank you, Trevor. So we still have some time for some Q&A. So I have some other questions here. Does GeoGuard, your solution can help with geopointing devices inside, for example, a local physical space, for example, like a room? Do you have anything that can help with this type of geofencing use case?
Yeah, definitely. With our SDK, we have a solution called Pinpoint that uses Bluetooth beacons in order to have highly granular geofencing in physical locations. So that uses the Bluetooth on a mobile phone with the rest of our stack for making sure that the user is where they say they are in a very specific location.
Can you give some examples of how we are using this today? I think there are some good examples on the gaming side as well about bars, pubs.
For the gaming space, this is driven by regulations, especially in new markets. So in some states, mobile gaming is permitted, but only on certain properties, such as in taverns and pubs in Montana. And then there's other cases where you can do sport gaming or sport betting on the floor of a casino complex, but not elsewhere in the state. And then in Washington, D.C., this is an important part of the solution to allowing the offering of gaming services within the district, where you have to ensure that that the service isn't being offered on federal land. So beacons and that high granularity of borders is important for controlling that access.
Thanks, Trevor. Another question here. If I wanted to block all users from specific countries, would GeoGuard be able to help us to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the key part of using GeoGuard solution for AML and sanctions protection. So in the crypto space, they've got those concerns, but also there's jurisdictions such as the US where they don't want to, crypto exchanges don't want to offer services to US residents because of the regulatory risk. So we've got clients that are using it in that way to geofence the US and other similar jurisdictions to de-risk their operations.
Thank you. Another question here, how to use IP addresses from visitors to prevent fraud? What is the value of an IP address when the user has dynamic IP address?
Well, that really gets down to the crux of the problem. IP addresses can't be trusted. So that's where our approach using multiple data points to look at the user's behavior and location over time, especially, but even their location compared to other transactions is an important approach to assessing their location and being more trustworthy than the approach of using IP addresses in the past.
Another question here, Trevor, it's related to reporting. Right? What type of reports are available out of the box, and if you can give some examples on how they are used for.
Sure. So while we think that the data that we send to your systems will mean that a lot of your reporting and analytics requirements are done in your own tools, our system, it does have a lot of reports and analytics tools to help go deeper. So that might not be a day-to-day use case, but it would give you the ability to do analysis with our tools in a deeper way. But one of the more important tools that we provide is a chargeback report tool, which can be used for chargeback defense. Because you'll have seen the user's behavior and potentially know their address, you would be able to use that address and their patterns of behavior and create a report that you would include in the defense when a dispute comes in on a credit card charge. So you should be able to respond to that with our chargeback report and and help defend against that dispute before it becomes a chargeback.
Thank you. See if I have more questions. And I also think we are getting to the top of the hour here. So I would like to thank Trevor and thank to everyone for attending the webinar today and for your participation. I hope you found this engaging as possible. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we will send a follow-up email with the recording. Please feel free to share this with your colleagues. You can also reach out to Trevor directly if you have any questions, and he can set up a follow-up call with you. If you have any questions and you want to have a one-on-one with him, he'll be happy to book some time with you. We hope you enjoyed this. There will be a short survey after the webinar ends, and please help us and provide some feedback in the survey. We hope you enjoyed, and we look forward to seeing you again in future webinars. Thank you.
Thank you.